Hey everyone, today I'm changing these spark plugs on the Toyota Corolla. Toyota recommends these be done every 120,000 miles per their maintenance guide. I'm doing this at 100,000 miles just because I've done a bunch of other things, so I'm just going to do this just to get it out of the way. They did make a running change in this generation of Corolla. They do not all use the same plugs. There are different spark plugs for different years. Definitely check your owner's manual under spark plug. It'll say what the recommended plug is and the model. It also gives the gap. Now these newer Corollas use an iridium spark plug. The gap does not have to be set as it states here. When they come, they will have this sleeve around them to protect the electrodes so the gap doesn't change or it doesn't get closed by getting banged up and shipping it all. As far as what spark plug to use, like I said, use iridium because the manual says and they're a better plug. But I recommend sticking with the OEM plug. Spark plugs are one of those things where I think you tend to have typically they work better than if you stick with the OEM ones. Sometimes aftermarket ones can have issues. These are Denzos. They're marked as Toyota, but they're made by Denso. So this is a really good iridium plug. It'll last a very, very long time. And then as far as what tools you're going to need, this is a relatively simple job. It only requires simple hand tools. You're going to need a 10 millimeter socket to get the coil pack off. You're going to need a 14 millimeter socket to get the spark plug in and out. Now you really need a 14 millimeter spark plug socket. What makes a spark plug socket different is they have this little rubber grommet on the bottom because that basically grabs and holds the plug. I didn't have one, so what I did was I sort of made one. I put foam in here. I had this little piece of extra foam and I put it in there basically to act like it, and it actually does hold the plug pretty well. So when I have to take it out, I can use this. A magnet will also use it because the ends are steel, but when it has to go back in, you need something to grab and hold the spark plug as it's going in. You're also going to need a torque wrench when you want to go put everything, put the spark plug back in and make sure it's torqued correctly. This takes 18 pounds of torque to put this in, so that's really important. The spark plugs bodies are steel and the cylinder head's aluminum, so you really want to be careful to make sure it goes in nice and straight and you torque it correctly. Extension with a ratchet for when it's coming out, and then just a couple of screwdrivers just to help pry back the coil pack. As with anything when you're working on the car, get rid of that plastic thing on the top. They're always in the way, and especially it's in the way with this. So to get started, you want to first, usually I'll take my air gun and I'll blow everything off to make sure there's no debris. You're going to be opening up the combustion chamber of the engine, so you really don't want any debris falling in there. So you want to make sure all the dust and anything that's sitting on top of the engine is gone. So I already did that. I blew everything off. You're basically going to have to lift up this tab. You push it back here, and the tab comes up a little bit. If you can see, it doesn't move very much, but you might need a screwdriver to get it off if it's a little troublesome. But you can see this tab comes back, and that just pulls straight off just like that. Now I recommend doing one thing at a time. Don't take everything off. This car's pretty easy to see which spark plug wire goes where. The colors alternate, and it has a very short pigtail on it, so it's really hard to like screw up and stick in the wrong spot. But I recommend only doing one at a time. So let me grab that wrench, and actually I'll do this in real time, and we'll take this off. So here's your 10 millimeter ratchet. This should also come off without a lot of effort, like this. And then this will be able to pull out the coil pack. The cowling is a little bit in the way, this back piece here, but you can just push it out of the way if you need to, and this just comes right out. So here's your coil pack. This is what the spark plug actually sits on. It grabs the bottom side of this. This is in good shape. It's nice and clean. Those things actually usually last quite a while, and these are easy to change. Now, before you go and pull the spark plug out, you want to take the air compressor that I was using before, the nozzle. You want to put it in here and blow anything out. Even though that's got rubber seals on it, debris does still get in there, and it can build up. And the last thing you want is a rock or a pebble or any debris falling inside the engine when you pull the spark plug out. So I'm always very thorough. Make sure I do that. Also, the reason why I take one off at a time is if you take all these off and go blow them out, debris can blow from hole to hole. So I usually only do one at a time, just as a reference point. And then when I'm done, you can mark the top of the coil pack to show that's the one you've done, just so you don't lose the reference point of where you actually are and which cylinder is actually done. So let me go ahead, and I'm just going to go ahead and get the spark plug out now. All right, with the old spark plug out, you always want to double check the numbers to make sure it's the correct model. In this case, it is. You also just want to make sure that everything is the exact same size. It's the same model, so I don't think you would have an issue with that, but just make sure that the length is exactly the same. If you put a longer spark plug in, it hits the piston, you're going to have a lot of problems. But this is obviously the exact same spark plug. It looks like it's in good condition. Nothing abnormal, nothing's broken, no buildup of carbon, anything like that. So it looks pretty good. Just as a reference, this is how this is going to sit. This sits in there. This boot goes over the electrode, and it sits like this. Now, you can put dielectric grease in this boot and on here a little bit if you want to. If you don't want to put it in dry, that's up to you. Some people do, some people don't. Sometimes they sell those in little tiny packs when you go to buy spark plugs. It's not a bad idea to put a tiny dab of grease on there. Looks like this, when they put this in, went in dry. When I put spark plugs back in, I don't like to put them in dry. Typically what I will do is I will take a single drop of oil and just put a little bit, literally, there's a single drop on the very ends of the threads here. Don't get it on the electrode, but I put a drop of oil here. So as it's threading into the cylinder, you don't have direct metal-on-metal contact, because, again, this is steel and the cylinder head is aluminum, so if you strip those threads, you're in a lot of trouble. So I always try to be very gentle. Do not use a ratchet when you're initially putting the spark plug in. Use the socket and the extension only and hand tighten it until you feel it grab the threads and seat all the way. Once it's seated all the way, then you go to the torque wrench at 18 foot-pounds and lock it in. And then it's just the reverse procedure after that's done. Once this is locked in, you put this back on, you put the bolt back in, tighten the bolt down, and you can put the electrical connector. And you're going to repeat this process for all 4 cylinders. Just make sure you don't forget to blow each spark plug tube out before you take the spark plug out. So let's get this buttoned up now. All right, got the spark plug ready to go. Took a tiny bit of motor oil, just very little tiny bit on the threads. You're not soaking it, just get enough on your fingers to put a little bit on the threads here. I put a little bit of dielectric grease on the tip here, just to help prevent corrosion. Now this will hold this when I go to put it into the cylinder, so it does not fall, and it can grab the threads nicely. Now, you might have to push this piece of rubber out of the way. It's a little bit in the way. I might have to fight it a little bit, but there we go. Now we're past it. You want to feel the threads grab very gently. I cannot even begin to explain how bad it is if you cross-thread a cylinder head, because you have to rip the engine apart, worst case scenario. So this should go in with minimal amount of effort. It came out with a lot more effort because when Toyota put the spark plug in from the factory, they put it in dry, so there was nothing on there. All right, now we feel nice and tight now. I can feel it tightened up all the way. Now we're going to go to the torque wrench. And we're going to dial in 18 pounds of torque. Okay. Depending on the type of torque wrench you have, you don't want to leave tension on it. This is the type you can leave tension on. I still take it off though. So we're just going to turn this. Until the torque wrench clicks. There it is. And it just clicked. So now we're at 18 pounds. And I'll see if I can get this. I'm gonna have to pop the torque wrench off of here with this piece of plastic in the way. You're gonna fight this thing with each spark plug, but it's not too bad. Luckily, since it's just plastic, it pushes right out of the way. Now, I just gotta make sure, if you did what I did and you use something else to sort of hold the plug in, like the piece of foam or another piece of, you can also use rubber tubing for this as well. Make sure it came out with it. And it did. You can see that it's still in there. But just for good measure, we'll hit it with the compressor again. Make sure everything came out, all the debris is out. Spark plugs changed. Now all we're going to do is put the coil pack back on, like that. It goes right on top of the spark plug. Gotta put this back in. Just all this does is just hold it in place from rattling out. Tighten that down, snug. Don't go crazy. You're just holding this piece of plastic down, so just snug it down. You're gonna click, you're gonna lock this in, push it down all the way. You're gonna hear it click. You're gonna give it a tug to make sure that it does not come off. So just like that. You take my ratchet again, my 10 mil. All right, and you'll feel it stop. There's a little steel sleeve in there so you don't over tighten it, and that's it. That's how you replace the spark plugs on a Toyota Corolla. This is a relatively easy change. Having the inline engine, they're much easier. All the spark plugs are right on the top. You're not like dealing with a V engine where the spark plugs on the back. So as you can see, this is a relatively simple spark plug change. You know, basic tools. The torque wrench and the spark plug socket are kind of the only specialty things. Also, you can use this to get the spark plug out if it's a little bit of pain, something with a magnet on the end, because these are steel and they have a pretty good grip, so that'll pull it right out of the tube if need be. But that was done in only a few minutes. Relatively simple, basic hand tools, and a relatively simple procedure that you can save yourself hundreds of dollars by doing this yourself instead of having the dealer or a mechanic do it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.